Welcome to another edition of the Let's Grow Show. Mark's getting emotional. And this is the Let's Grow Show, What's Right or What's Right Now, with my dear friend Mark Civitella. And this week we're focusing on the beautiful notion of Christmas, Mark. And Mark's done quite a bit of research on this, actually, and, the impact of Christmas. Mark, would you like to kick us off with some of the insights you've been able to gather? I think it was ChatGPT, wasn't it?
Oh, thank you very much. And can I first say how magnificent you look?
Thank you, Mark.
I feel underdressed.
Well, I went to the trouble of getting a 2024 thematic shirt as well, so
Well, I thought given the show and Christmas and New Year, I really should look at what will be the big theme of 2025, which will be, of course, the mass use now of AI. I mean, AI is now better. Apple just loaded its AI systems into everything, and the new iPhone and the whole bit. So all those intelligence systems, they're all on and they'll all be competing. So I thought, what should I do given the festive season? And I saw some ads for Kmart, and I saw some ads, about, it's the time of goodwill and giving. It's, peace on earth, goodwill to all people, etc. And I thought, well, I haven't seen much of that. So look, I'll turn to AI. So I had a look at, so what did ChatGPT tell us about Christmas? It gave us 6 key points to think about. Here are the things: commercialization, family tensions, financial stress, loneliness and isolation, environmental concerns, and cultural sensitivity.
Excellent. It's a good start.
So we're not off to a good start with AI.
It's a wish list, yeah.
There were no reindeers there.
No, may all your dreams come true. And I believe it had some advice about, the impact of families at Christmas.
Oh, well, I then went to the rival. I said, there's something wrong with the algorithms. There's something wrong in there. I better go to the competitor. So I went to the competitor, and it gave me a rather alarming set of information. The key impact of Christmas is stress, unrealistic expectation, family dynamics in the sense of complex rivalry, dominance, cultural diversity in a negative sense, and of course mental health. But wait, I think it's a better system. It had some tips. It had some tips for everyone going into Christmas, given the peace on earth, goodwill.
Yeah.
Be understanding of people's situations. Break up celebrations to keep groups apart. Choose a check-in buddy to share feelings and challenges after the day, right? Practice gratitude and compassion, and debrief after the event. So,
yes. I don't know that we'll be conducting a debrief publicly, Mark, but I will say that this year I've donned a highly strategic approach to Christmas, in that I'm not spending it with my immediate family. I'm spending it with my partner's family, which means if any of them tick me off, there's no sort of long-winded trauma attached to my stay. So safety first, Mark. If you spend it with another family, you can think what you like.
I can give you some. When I was young and stupid, and I can remember I was with a girlfriend at the time, a very affluent family, and I had too much Christmas cheer, Scott, and I noticed that in the backyard they had an electric creek. And so I at some point, the sister's boyfriend, we decided that we had so much to drink, the only thing you could logically do is to crank up the Christmas creek, which anyway, I don't want to suggest I ruined Christmas, but only partially, I think.
Yeah, just a little bit.
If there's anyone out there, who needs any advice on, don't do anything you hear for the next half hour. So yes, you're absolutely right, Scott, but I can disprove your theory. It can still go wrong.
Yes, it does say, it says a lot about the risk aversity of AI, doesn't it, really? I mean, it's supposed to be a joyous occasion, and it's coming with a lot of warning signs, Mark.
I mean, we're going to be relying so much on AI. I thought it would be, well, let's ask AI. I mean, it's all popping up now. Everyone's
Fast
getting.
forward from now, we won't have a thought of our own, probably, Mark. I know what I think about that. Just give me a moment.
We have to sort of cancel Christmas on the basis of the information received, I think. But
Yeah.
anyway, but I thought it was a good intro because we're also looking at 30% of all jobs being replaced by AI, and they're clearly not people playing the role of Santa, in department stores. But that's
I wonder what it would do to the trajectory of child screaming if we outsource Santa
to AI.
Yeah, indeed. Artificial Santa. I mean, there might be some merit in that, Mark. But
yes.
Been an interesting year. I mean, an interesting. We covered the Trump election, or the Trump election. I think it's the US they call it. The US election. Sorry, still caught in Trumpsylvania there. So we covered the election in our last episode, and there's been a lot of moving parts this year, a lot of interest. See cryptos going strongly, and for the most part, there's some challenging of conventional financial systems, and more recently, let's just say the endorsement of murder. Is that?
No, well, it's quite extraordinary with the. And maybe it's you show your age when someone was assassinated as a health insurance CEO in New York. They've apprehended, and we'd all be familiar with that incident. I believe the perpetrator was obviously arrested. He was good looking and had ripped abs, so that seemed to distract the justice system, or at least the media's interpretation of justice. So there's
This is Instagram profile, Mark. Sorry, I'm just sorry, got distracted.
We're all a bit distracted. It was, so we had this thing, and then Michael Moore was asked about it because he was named in this sort of the manifesto, and he's somewhat equivocal. That the following day he said, no, I don't endorse murder, which obviously he doesn't. But the reaction to it, he was somewhat equivocal, saying, well, so what do you expect? I thought, well, it's actually really quite illuminating, because normally people run 100 miles to condemn, and they're not running 100 miles. In fact, online was a huge outpouring of support for the perpetrator. And I was even in an Uber, and the Uber driver was saying, well, they've got it coming. So I'm thinking, it's not a great Uber ride, but
so if you are a senior exec for any large corporation doing anything slightly nefarious to consumers, you could expect that. I think you mentioned before, Mark, that Kevlar vests might be on the wish list this year for a lot of our corporate leaders.
Because it's just not it's quite extraordinary, and I think. And we even had a situation here in Australia where there was a bombing of a synagogue in in a leafy part of Melbourne, very quiet part, totally, and obviously for those who've watched, the Hitler channel on cable TV or something, they call the History Channel. Seems to be a story about Hitler, but. The burning of synagogues by the Nazis in the 1930s is, I haven't seen those burn for a while. Like, oh wow, it's in my own. This is extraordinary. And it took 4 days for the Prime Minister to turn up. And I thought, now this is a right now situation. Like anyone, if you go to the textbooks, I tell you, in the minute of crisis, now then that was declared. It was declared a terrorist act. Just like the assailant in New York was declared both a murder and a terrorist act. So this is and this is probably something which will spark debate, because once you fall under the terrorism laws, it's sort of Guantanamo Bay sort of stuff, the normal stuff. So and how willing will governments be to enact that sort of approach? And so and then so the Prime Minister, back to Melbourne, doesn't turn up for 4 days. Of course, the one thing you don't do is, hide in a hole for 4 days if that's going to happen, because the minute you're out there, say, playing tennis in your whites, that's the shot that's going to be used. Meanwhile, there's rallies, concerns, and I'm not buying into, the issue with the Middle East at the moment. It was just a simple situation of a response to that, possibly, in a suburb on the other side of the world. You don't then turn up 4 days later, get heckled, and interestingly enough, a few days later, there was a car bombing and some graffiti misspelling Israel in which, pedant grammar for that's terrible. Obviously, that the graffiti artists aren't practicing, and that's their thing. There should be a correction method. There should be an online check for it or something. But anyway, they've gone analog, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone off and graffiti, misspelling Israel. And the following morning, but at night, following morning, New South Wales Premier's there on the spot, and you think, well, and saying, I need to see this for myself. This is not what it's about. And it's one of those ones where it's a real right and right now thing. You said, how do we get it right? Maybe it's this group versus that group. Which one is it? 50% plus one? Does that make it right because we're in politics, or is it just one of those right now? No. This is about the rule of law. You need to be there. You need to show support. You need to do this. You need to, take control. You need to set the bar. And I think very often in politics, people get confused between winning and taking, finding out where the numbers are. And politics isn't about, taking sides. It's about fixing the problem. Right? So, and somehow or other, they all think, we're going to pick the winning team or something, but actually it's about getting it right. And sometimes that's being in the moment, getting it right is getting it right now.
That's true. That's true.
So we're here to fix this problem.
And I think, well, to answer the question, yes, it was Albo. Having said that, and to take a bipartisan sort of view of it, we did some years ago during horrific bushfires have a prime minister on the beach, didn't we? In another.
Yes.
They got a little bit of coverage, if I'm correct.
It was it was actually in Hawaii.
Yes, he was in Hawaii.
That wasn't a good look. But relax. There's also so anyone who'd been in Parliament as long as the Prime Minister would have seen the torching of the previous Prime Minister, who was
yes, indeed,
absolutely, So I don't think the tennis whites was a good look. But you may also go back to the bushfires. Welcome to Australia. The bushfires in Melbourne, where the then head of the emergency, well, the head of police, not emergency response, didn't go.
Black Saturday, you're talking about?
Black Saturday did not go to the actual, control centres, as numbers of people lost their lives, and the devastation was absolutely horrible. I was actually in a restaurant with having dinner with a biographer. So of course the journalists, by the time they worked out what wine they'd ordered, all this stuff, how much, don't be seen with your biographer when you should be at the scene of the crime, sort of thing, and she just got torched and eventually, tarnished her own reputation as Commissioner of Police. So it's not like this is new. We have precedents which tell you, what you need to do in situations like that. It was like it's just all this learning evaporates. It's like it just disappears. It melts into thin air.
Well, it's not, I think, I don't know whether I've ever mentioned this on a previous show, specifically around doing what's right now. But I recall being in the food industry many bleeds ago now, and the first company I was with had effectively in the peanut butter there was rat feces discovered in the peanuts that went into the production, and the management of that was appalling. Don't need to name the company, but the CEO threw the PR person out front and sort of sat back from it. There was lots of finger pointing at the primary producer and all that sort of stuff. And then conversely, I was in a separate company literally 2 years later where we had extortion threats on our products, and we had an awful lot of products in an awful lot of stores. And in those days, we had some 400 to 500 sales reps, and it was all hands on deck, including, myself and other people, 24/7, getting all that product off the shelf. So there was an extortion threat on our product, and we got every single product off the shelf from every single retailer. About, it was just over 24 hours. The CEO was out front. The CEO reasserted the Australian heritage of the organisation and how its responsibility was to all Australians. It was something that Canberra, our nation's capital, could take note from. But what an incredibly different response to a very similar stimulus, and a very different outcome. I mean, in the end, that company that manufactured the peanut butter, the share price, or their shareholding rather, category, it took a long time to recover. Whereas in the latter case, where there were products being pulled off every shelf, the market share of that organisation exploded as soon as we were back on shelf. So all that to say that people are looking for leadership in times of crisis, and particularly in a time where stimulus and unrest and let's be honest, this incredible surge or trend towards I'm right, you're wrong. It reminds me of that. What was the show? My daughter loved it. Where Matilda, where the father, Danny DeVito, says to the kid, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're small. That is the society we live in today. There's so much conflict that we have that we absolutely depend upon leadership more than ever before. In a time that perhaps you'd argue we've got less selection of pure leadership.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I looked at that incident in New York and I thought, well, they've just given up. They've given up thinking that that it will get better, that leadership will emerge and fix these things. That obviously this one was related to the US, health system. That the health system will keep the people, and and so on. And so those sorts of tensions. I mean, I think that's the critical bit where I think in the election of Trump was more of the same is not good enough anymore. We can't put up with more of the same. And right. I think that was the key message. And if you actually look at the voting patterns here in Australia, is that the parties who since pretty well since federation in one form or another have been the dominant sort of two parties, or one of them's changed a bit, but the Conservative and the Progressives, if you like, though those things blend, they're no longer relevant terms, I think, for any of it. If like their market share, very much in the sense of the peanut butter, their market shares, and people are looking for a trusted brand.
That's right.
Like to use the other example you're giving, and they can't find a trusted brand. So that's right.
And there's so many. We have had so many lessons on this in the last few years. I mean, during COVID, I gave a presentation in, I feel like it was May 2020, maybe April, and I talked about psychosocial regression. So what happens when your locus of control diminishes exponentially, and you are now reliant on like a parent figure? Moreover, what happens when that parent figure is the least trusted entity that you have in your mind, being both the media and politics? And what happens to people psychologically? That was what the whole session was about. And it's, if you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer, which I do every year because I think it's really interesting, it ain't getting better out there. We don't trust these people in positions of authority. We don't trust the media, and for very good reason. But we are indeed looking, particularly when we've got all this conflict in society, we are looking for that leadership. And I suppose it's funny, I was just with a client yesterday and they were talking about some attributes of product and, environmental attributes of their product and Australian made and all that sort of stuff. And And in the end, what we're left to deal with as marketers or communications people is we're left to deal with the perception of reality, not reality itself. Right? So these symbols around environmental cues or made in Australia cues, as I was articulating to this client, so they are all well and good, but do people actually buy as a result of them? And invariably, on numbers, the answer is no. So we do get caught in the thick of thin things. And, I think we are in a situation where we have not only high conflict, but we have high volume coming from the minorities of society. And again, another proof point is Trump winning the election, who, quite simply appealed to the majority of perceived ideals and ideas. Many people outside the US would say that the US is in a spot of bother at the present moment from an economy perspective, but it is not what Americans choose to believe. They do not want to believe that. And that's fine, by the way. There's a lot to be said for, there's a lot of criticism that people have of America and its pride and its, I guess, its elitist view of themselves versus the rest of the world. But there's also a lot to be said for that in terms of, that confidence, that inherent confidence in the greatness of their nation, right or wrong. But the reality doesn't matter. It's the perception that drives the needle, right? So, and that's what we as communicators need to remember at all times. It's not what's real, it's what people are thinking.
Yeah. I think, it's like if someone was to get up, say it's all going great, and all these people in those states that shifted to Trump and all the rest, no one's going to believe you, when you say, it's like there's the economy and my economy and the people around my family, the people around me, the people in my town, our economy. If you're in a destitute, shrinking, marginalized sort of world, it actually makes it worse when the economy is going really well, because why was I left behind? What did I do? Sorry, aren't I part of that? Are there two sorts of worlds here? Am I missing it? Because my passport says I'm a citizen of this country, and I'm not feeling it, So I think it gets to, just on that, we were discussing it earlier, so what is the word? Macquarie Dictionary word of 2024. It's not this piece.
This is a good one, Mark.
The word is enshittification, right? So
yes, indeed. Enshittification. Write that down, kids, and playing at home.
Your company, Scott, particularly with that hat on, mate.
I've enshittified my look, yes, indeed.
So you could use various like to enshittify and all the rest. That is the word of the year, and it's now adopted into the Australian dictionary, and the example, which is, for those who haven't heard of the example, is like Uber comes in. Uber's fantastic. It's great. It's so simple. It comes in, and what they do is they break all the laws in your state. They drive the taxi business out. They drive the sort of, the driver business out. They pay drivers more, charge the consumer less, usually funded by investment capital. And then at a certain point, when they've killed their competitors, they introduce things like surge pricing, which actually is more than you ever would have paid in a taxi for the same trip, because they were sort of set. So that system is called enshittification, if you like, is that it was good and they turned it to shit. And I think what we're seeing and why that's become the word is people are looking at a whole lot of those sort of services, and Facebook would be a perfect example of enshittification. I thought I was the customer that were giving me these amazing services. Now I realise I was the product. Then they sold my product to Cambridge Analytica, who did this. And if you're in Australia, I think Facebook just got fined 50 million. They have to recompensate 50 million to people that were on Facebook at that time and did whatever. So whatever the payout is in other countries, I'm not sure, but that just was out yesterday. So that's a perfect example of enshittification. And so what we've got is a word now to try and describe the feeling we have of these things that we sort of hoped would bring a beneficial change, which just turned up as in shitified processes. I'm trying to work all the angles of the phrase. And I think, you actually look at things like, in Australia, the higher education system has been enshittified.
Yes.
It was good, now it's not, and now people are paying a fortune for something which isn't very good. It used to be good and free.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's expensive, and some of it isn't. Some of it is good, some of it isn't. But the price is, So what went wrong? What went wrong? So there's no point blaming this or that or foreign students becomes the issue in Australia. That's not going to fix shitification, So I think that's where we're at, where we're now getting this raft of new words that captures some sense of disappointment and an understanding that things went from not too bad, or the expectation was there and that's not been delivered on. In fact, it's been quite the opposite. It's been a tremendous disappointment. And I think the fact that becomes the word to capture 2024, I'd like to think provides me with optimism for 2025, but I've never been optimistic before. I've never been disappointed.
Oh, indeed. Now, it's on theme. In fact, I couldn't have ordered it better. And I'm certainly not referring to you in this first component, Crystal. Speaking of enshittification, I was supposed to have a tradesperson here at 1 o'clock who has just informed me he's 5 minutes away, which is and it is currently 10:57 a.m. So, like all good tradespeople, he's as reliable as the average politician in a disaster. So, Crystal wanted to say a few words, which hopefully aren't controversial. Crystal, please bipartisan at all times. Mark and I have our opinions, which we sometimes keep to ourselves. But you wanted to say a couple of things, Crystal. Welcome aboard.
Hi, guys. I just honestly wanted to say happy holidays. I love your guys' hat. And kind of officially introduce you, Scott, to my friend Christy, who's been commenting in the chat.
Christy commenting, yep.
That was who I had wanted to introduce you to. She is actually doing a lot of really positive things for male survivors on her channel and supporting. And she lives down under,
Yeah, Christy, well, let's catch up. I think I reached out to you on LinkedIn. Let's do that. Thank you, Crystal.
And
Mark, how do you want to handle
Christy
the next
has LinkedIn, actually, honey. But I think I connected you guys on Facebook.
Perfect. Okay, cool.
But I wanted to say happy holidays.
This trading, Mark? Thank you. Holiday, really good to hear from you.
So,
thanks.
Love you.
Thank you,
guys, and happy holidays. Thank you for letting me grace your presence for a moment.
Cheers, Crystal. Appreciate it. See ya.
Bye.
So, what do I do with this?
Here with one of those.
Well, I'm going to have to go down. Well, I had been rehearsing my village people dances, but so maybe the tool belt is nearby. But I'm not sure how I'm going to manage this. I'm just going to let the guy in effectively. So,
well, I can tell you. Let him in. I'll recount a funny. That there's a famous tradesperson joke which our American friends may recall was actually delivered by Ronald Reagan. He had this fantastic. He was doing with it. People forget he was called the Great Communicator, and you can Google some of his stuff and YouTube. Some of his delivery, obviously he was trying to denigrate the Soviet Union and run it down and all the rest, because obviously they had terrible production systems, and the US was on song, and obviously the Soviet Union back then wasn't. And so he tells the story of the guy who goes to buy a car, and of course there's a 4-year wait to get your car. So he turns up, he pays his money, and he says, so I'd like, the car, great, that's it, terrific, look, fantastic. In 4 years' time, on this day, your car will be ready. And the guy responds, he says, morning or afternoon? To which the car, in 4 years' time, he's like, I've got the plumber coming in the morning.
That's exactly right. No, they're good. I mean, I also, it turns out, Mark, that you can, as soon as if you do a trade or moreover a medical degree, you can keep people waiting as long as these are services that have no time or essence of time attached to them.
No.
And I don't know whether you know this, but my doctors and his time is far more valuable than mine, I've come to learn. And he can be up to an hour late for an appointment.
Quantum
my clients are not so forgiving, but yeah.
It's quantum time, but that's just in your universe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully with the assistance of AI, I'll get my mind around these complex systems that I'm clearly uneducated with.
With
my
AI.
tradesperson has just decided, the grace of God, he's just decided to eat something instead, which isn't me, which is good. It's all great. It's all going well here. I think as we go into, and Mark and I, we should touch on Mark, because not even touch on, we should plug like crazy and put a bit of pressure on ourselves too. We have the Doing What's Right versus What's Right Now book that will be coming out at the end of January by hook or by crook, won't it, Mark? And we're both
short time frame, Scott.
Yeah. Well, we did commit. But we will be tapping away in the sunshine here, just refining, some of our approaches. And I think, I'm excited about that book coming out, because we actually have explored a lot of really great case studies about decision making around positioning, and around that nuance of deciding to do what's right or to do what's right now. And it's something that philosophically we'd love to get out into the public as soon as possible. We had talked about it. I think my clients will sort of disappear in the next couple of days. So after that, I'll be right. I think. Although now I've got clients in other countries who don't do in Australia, for anyone listening who's not from Australia. In Australia, we have an 8-week public holiday around Christmas. So I don't know whether you know, but basically there is no business that takes place from about now to February, isn't it, Mark? Before we actually get this
crank up
again.
Easter.
Just a couple of weeks in, not to fatigue ourselves, just get a couple of weeks under the belt before Easter holidays. That's right. We don't need to, as it turns out, and for some of you that don't know this, and I talked about the American economy being in trouble, but we are going so well in Australia that we can actually compete, right? We can actually compete, 44 weeks of the year. And it works for us. We don't need to. We're giving you a head start. Take the 8 weeks. We don't need it. We're such high performance in Australia. We're so committed to being a global competitor that we might as well give you guys a head start. We're just that good.
Yeah, I think the economy. I think the Prime Minister just rings Rio, BHP, Santos, all the other minerals.
Yes.
Just said, could you turn up the dial to 11?
Yeah. Could you dig a bit more? Yeah, just dig a little deeper. Everyone else is at the beach. Would you mind? Just pull out a bit more uranium, will you, and get it out there?
We got ships waiting. Get it out.
It's a very sophisticated economy, Australia.
You can't make payroll this month. Could you? More coal. You're good. But it is that sort of Russia invades Ukraine, and Australia has a boom because everyone can't buy Russian energy. EU put the ban on it, so Australia is exporting coal to the EU.
Are you saying that the Australian government may have planned the invasion?
No.
Oh, hang on, Mark.
Every sort of disaster. Oh, this is good for business.
Yes, it'll be great. It's great for business,
Fantastic.
Yeah, but those tariffs are going to kill us, aren't they? Those tariffs that Trump's going to charge his own people, they're going to kill us.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to do us a lot of harm.
But I think it's it's going to be a very, very interesting year. And I think next year we've got AI, we've got Donald Trump. I don't know whether what'll be happening. We're up to COP29, I think, on all those sorts of international I don't know whether he'll be there at COP30. Australia, always sort of rolls up with a delegation, and that's sort of it. I think that was the point, is to get to the buffet.
Well, that was a highlight this year,
Sure.
wasn't it? The Australian delegate at the massive highlight. I mean, you talk all about, it's great to see us focusing on the right things. To send an Australian delegation to the where was it this year?
Azerbaijan or something?
Azerbaijan, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Mm.
But luckily, she did a welcome to nation outside of the nation, which was good. So that was good. We paid homage to traditional Indigenous people who were nowhere near Azerbaijan ever. And it was also telling that so much money had been spent in the participation.
Yeah, but there was
how many people were listening?
5.
5 people in the audience. Yeah, no, it was great. And that again, we don't need.
Who would bother listening to Australia on environmental issues? That's your question.
I don't know what the criticism is. I mean, we just, we're pulling it out of the earth. We're trying to get rid of the toxic stuff. That's what we're trying to do, effectively, long range. But I will say, it did occur to me, I've got a very large event planned. It's not sinister. It's not involving Korea or nothing like that. But we have a very large event planned around global hunger. And I was considering, the environment. If we got Greta Thunberg, if we got her in, sort of had a half hour of silence to evade any criticism that we might be just talking, would that work, Mark? Do you think?
Well, I mean that we've discussed that before. That is the absolute right now moment. With environment, you've got the bureaucratization of the system. Once it gets to government, you've got to create a bureaucracy and a system and a process and rules and agreements and the Greta Thunbergs and it splits on age, very much so. Just do it now. Do it right now. And we've got to get it right. And getting it right means we set up systems and processes and functions and trading systems and this and offsets and carbon markets and blah 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 blah. And I see. I have sympathy for Greta Thunberg. If I was young, maybe I would be very much more like Greta Thunberg. I'm not, but I see the point of view. Sometimes. Whether you in fact see this in that continuum of is an issue or a crisis, if you think it's closer to it's a right now, And
we saw a tremendous strategy.
To get it right.
We saw a tremendous strategy, didn't we, in Australia? Australia's largest producer and seller of electricity. I mean, they did a wonderful job at committing to clean energy. I think by 2050, Mark, by the time any of the leadership had long passed away, was the commitment that they made. And they got their skates on, no doubt about that. So 26 years time, I can't wait. I'll be in a nursing home, obviously, watching it all unfold. It's phenomenal.
But and I think, but of course, you're a pessimist, Scott, because I believe I understand that Australia is going to become a renewable energy superpower. There you go. We've never been a superpower at anything before.
Okay.
We're going to be a renewable.
Well, we've got the sun going for us. We've got the sun going for us. So we've got
and apparently
pretty good.
They're going to lay a long sort of cable to Singapore, I think. I think that's the part of the plan.
Just dump it all.
We'll flick the lights on and thank us.
Yeah, well, they will. It's a little bit like the South Australian strategy of ridding South Australia of coal and yet pumping in stupidly large volumes of it into the state so that they can actually have electricity. But their wind farms are not quite cutting it. So it's very interesting. But please do go and buy a Tesla and ensure that it is fueled by electricity that is driven by coal, or you're doing the planet a favour there. So I think, but again, I'm probably being pessimistic, Mark, but as we look forward, gazing into the prospect of reality, we are but left with perception. And that is what we all have to manage, people, and that is the challenge before us, perhaps more than ever before. The large volumes of stimulus that hit us every day, I'm not dissimilar when we look at the conflict in Israel and Gaza Strip. My strategy on that, Mark, is to shut that up and not say anything about it to anyone ever. Do I condone it? Well, it really doesn't matter whether I condone it or don't, because I'm not saying a word.
Well,
I think I'm probably lined up with the majority there, am I?
Oh yeah, but it is, history does provide you with, these sorts of moments. We were talking earlier, people may have seen, those shows like Sicario, which is actually it's for assassin, which actually comes from Sicari, which was in fact first century, was sort of Jewish zealots who were occupied by the Romans, obviously at that point. And this it comes from the word little dagger. This dagger they would have, and they would go and stab these Roman people and kill them. And of course, then they get slaughtered. By this occupying Roman army, which was, I don't think people can remember ancient Rome. It was quite a long-standing thing. And several hundred years later, it did fall, and I think there's a lesson in that. So that's where we actually get the word. So I was just thinking of, all these things and terrorism laws and all this sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, my God, history provides us with these incredible sort of illuminations around this. And here we are at a situation where people feel that they under that there is oppression, that they must fight back, that they've got to do something. And history isn't kind, no,
it's not.
It's not kind, and but people feel that.
Love it. Christy just said she feels like a Split Enz song going on.
I think it does.
Yes, it's true. That's right.
It's terrible because it's it's getting it right now. There's a right now moment. Sometimes it's not going to get it right. That's not, that will probably exacerbate, there's a whole lot of things I think we're going to go into, and we're going to see a very, very interesting 2025, because it will be those tensions between, I need to do something must happen. Will this actually change something? And in a funny way, Trump provided the hope to those who voted for him for that reason. The more of the same could not be tolerated. We cannot put up with more of the same.
Absolutely. And I think
let's see how that plays out.
Mark and I have, next year, I don't know whether you know, Mark, but we'll have to have some sort of event. But it'll be 20 years of working with each other next year. So we started with crayons at about 4 years of age, obviously. But 20 years next year we've been working together. And I will say that we do have a bit of a laugh about what goes on out there. We always have a bit of a chuckle about some of the decisions that are being made and some of the astoundingly obvious things that happen in society that seem to catch people by surprise. And I think as much as we can be a little bit satirical, a bit, come across as pessimistic, I guess the calling and what our intention is, both in our work and in the book, is to get people to stop and think about what it is we're doing, who in God's name believes you, and what are you actually going to do as a result of your commitment. And I think that's where, that's the field that we've worked in together for a long time. And, we do like to have a laugh because, frankly, human behavior around this stuff, particularly bureaucracy, is a very funny thing. I mean, there's so much waste in the world. There's so much, we're still, was it nearly coming up 40 years since Geldof wanted to feed the world. And we've still got kids dying left, right, and centre in countries. I mean, what are we doing? And I don't think ChatGPT's, going to 3D print food yet, but we'll see. I just feel like we get caught in the thick of thin things. It's what Mark's and my job is to get people focused on the shit that matters, the shit that people will get around. The things that actually move the needle. And that's what we'd like to see more of. So cynicism and joking, or particularly mine, Mark's a bit more level. He deals with politicians, I don't. So, well, I don't much, but I feel like what we're trying to do is get people to stop and think about the decisions we make and the implications of those decisions to the people that we're saying we want to serve.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it is something. I mean, the motivation. What is the motivation? Is you look at this and you think, well, can I help? Can I try and move that needle? Can I? And here we are. We've got to a certain age, thankfully. We met so young, Scott.
Yeah.
We're having debates. We're having debates. And we're looking into 2025, and the two key sort of, at least in Australia, and I'm not sure in the US, domestic things are effectively food and shelter. We have people who do not have access to food in a country that's one of the biggest food exporters in the world, and shelter in a country with a lot of room,
a lot of room. We've got a bit of room, yeah.
Where you would think, how did we end up here? How are we? This is like Maslow's sort of hierarchy. We're not even ticking boxes. This isn't about high-speed broadband.
No. Well, in fact, in Australia, you can be sure it's never about high-speed. No. We just caught up to the Canadian standard from 1999 a couple of years ago. No, you're right, and it's we are living in Australia as a wealthy country. We do have a lot of people that struggle to put food on the table. We are seeing increasing cost of living have huge impacts and stress. We are seeing a lot of isolation in our society, an increasing number of people that live alone, which has exploded the pet industry. The new partner is the pet. But we are seeing a society that increasingly is separating from each other. And as we come into Christmas, the very notion of which is to gather with the people that you love, it's important that we point out that we are currently living in a society that seeks to divide. And whenever we are fronting situations with I'm right, you're wrong, we're probably both missing it. And, we're probably both missing the point without curiosity to, another, and without curiosity to, the intentions and the long-term impacts of people's decisions and behavior. We're going to continue to be at odds with each other. We will continue to drive the isolation and loneliness that's systemic in our society, and we'll continue to see people who are significantly disadvantaged by the haves and have-nots that continue to peel away at society. And for those of us that aren't aware of that, wake the fuck up.
It is. And it was interesting, like we started sort of jokingly with the sort of AI. That's the AI stuff. You can't find positive when anyone can go and do it, and it's not my AI, the AI. So it's not like it's a curated response to me. Is this sort of separate people? It'll stop fights at Christmas. Keep groups apart.
Yeah, just stay away from each other and you'll be fine. But the truth of the matter is that my parents, it's a sample of one, but nonetheless an insight. My parents live 1,700 kilometres away. I haven't really lived there since I was 18 a few years ago. And what I've noticed over the years is that flights before Christmas used to be rather cheap. No one would travel until after Christmas, until they'd spent time with family and extended family. But today, flights are very expensive from about now, or maybe a week ago, actually, to go up there. I come from a place with 40 kilometres of beautiful beach. But now it's expensive to go up before Christmas, which simply tells me that the extended family is being punted at Christmas, and people aren't spending the time together. And that's been something I've observed over the last 30 odd years, that we just have to sit back and wonder, why is this, and what is it that we can do to, as individuals, to perhaps open our minds a little bit more to people's viewpoints, or to be more accepting of difference. We speak very symbolically about gender pronouns and Indigenous welcome to countries, and we say all these things out loud, but the truth is that we are not united, and we are not accepting, and we are not in anything but constant opposition with each other. Please take over before my rant continues. Somebody stop me now.
Well, you're absolutely right, but I did. People often would say, "Well, what was the cause of this? What's wrong? Why is this? And why is it that these?" And it's that, and where did it go wrong? Because you think in terms of the evolution of the species, it's only been a very, very short period of time, like a dot at the end, that we've lived the way we do, with particular economic systems and nation states and things like that. It was basically tribal for 99 point whatever % of the species' existence, taking a Darwinian view on this. And I remember reading an anthropological thing years ago, which is unusual. Scott, you probably was nothing, no other reading matter on the flight that day, whatever. Anyway, and it was a very interesting observation, and it basically, it tracks it in certain tribes where social cohesion was the absolute defining component, that the survival of that tribe was based around a capacity for social cohesion, right? Alpha males, right, that would want to, hey, let's go and invade the next, let's do this, I'm going to take charge, whatever, was seen as such a threat to social cohesion that they would, sneak, and the community would kill the alpha male, would stab the alpha male, and every person in that community had to grab a spear and stab the alpha male because it would threat social cohesion. You fast forward, and a guy goes and shoots a CEO, a billionaire, multi-millionaire, the multi-billion-dollar CNO in the street of New York. It's not did he blow it up and blow innocent people up? No, he targeted assassination. If he had a spear, how would we view it? You know what I mean? What's the progress? Is that, how do you equate that? I'm not conducting. It should never happen. And we have human rights and things like that. We developed those pretty well, in the 20th century. Didn't exist before then, by the way. We see things differently, but what is it, anthropologically, what is it as a species that we're looking for? How do we regain or generate something where we have a sense that for me to do well, we all should do well? We all need to do well, and is that just a utopian thing now because it's just not applicable in a competitive market economy, for example? So these are the sorts of things, and can you reconcile them? Well, these are the sorts of things I suppose I sort of think about when I think about this, and how would you get this right? And I don't think most of the things people are doing are getting it anywhere near right. Very often I find these other things a distraction from that core thing. As a society, how do we all live a happy, and people are all happy and prosperous. I don't think prosperity is a factor,
What is yes.
Well, it's like security and having enough.
Yes,
is a factor. There's a famous line, from two guys where they had a investment company, and one sort of took the money and ran and had whatever, 500 million or whatever, and then the other guy kept going and actually had billions, and he was asked, do you feel you've missed out, because your colleague, you could have, been a billionaire, you're only a millionaire, sort of thing. And he said, no, I've got something he'll never have. And he said, what's that? Enough. Right? There's always more. And when is enough? What's enough?
Well, it's so true. And I talk about that family dynamic at Christmas, and the very notion of it, in terms of people coming together. And when you look at ChatGPT, or rather, it wasn't ChatGPT, was it? But it was whatever you used. Hopefully it wasn't Apple Intelligence. But anyway, that's been so brilliant, hasn't it? It's transformed my life for the last couple of days. But when you think about that, and I hope you don't mind, Olu, but I want to talk about you. I work with a guy in Lagos called Olu, and Olu is a great dude, and he painstakingly works with me, and fun to work with. I don't know, mate. And as we speak, you know, he's somehow, you know, at what time is it there? At 1:26 a.m. in Lagos, he is somehow on this call with malaria, trying to take care of his 4 kids. And yet most of us will be out in the Apple store wondering why we can't quite get the right model in time. So let's think about the fact that, you know, and as a father and the family that he's got, and I've, you know, had the fortune of saying good day to his kids online. Wow, he's got a lot. He's got a lot, and he's got a lot in what many would deem to be not much. I love comments like that. Sounds communist. Which bit? All of it? You know, is that a summary, Steve? I don't know. Which part do you think sounds communist? I don't know. I'm not sure. You see that? I just saw that. Anyway, let's not get distracted. I don't know who Steve Agent is, but no doubt we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah.
Any closing comments, mate? We should wrap this one up.
Oh, well, I'm just thanks again for having me on, Scott. And yeah, I just think, you know, all this is really, you know, for me, it's a great chance to sort of talk about these things which normally you don't talk about in other sort of forum. It's not like you can, you know, have these sorts of discussions. So
can't.
Thank you again, and you know, and thank you for people tuning in, and you know, hopefully we provoke some thoughts, and I look forward to seeing what 2025. But there's always an edge of pessimism, but I think we're in that sort of era at the moment. We're coming out of something and we're going into something else. I think as an epoch, you know, we're coming out of one, and no one's quite sure, you know, I think how that'll play. But, you know, one always hopes for the best, and because, you know, really when you think of it, it's all about almost what comes after you, you know, that you're hoping that things get better. You're hoping that things you know, can improve. You're hoping that you know, people aren't left behind. And
yes.
But,
and I think, you know, I do want to say that you know, when we do put these thoughts together, you know, including the book that we're putting together, you know, I can't wait for people to give us some feedback on some of that thinking. But, you know, people do come to us for advice on these things, right? And Mark and I often have, it's not just because Mark and I have protracted conversations about the world and I laugh and we think we're entertaining, therefore you should all listen. Beyond that, we do think that some of the things that we do have to say and share are important, guys, as communicators and marketers out there, and human beings trying to figure this whole shit show out.
I think just one final point for all the marketers out there. Yes, you're right. Scott and I, we're putting a book out after Christmas. It won't be a stocking stuffer, right?
We're not quite in time for that.
No, right, did we? You know, when everyone's spent their money, we've got a new product in the market. Possibly a great cue there, Scott.
Yes, indeed. I should have had the image or something, and you know, the grand opening.
Pre-order. You know?
Mark and I will be doing a book signing under the bridge, won't we, Mark? In the city somewhere, just standing outside a cardboard box near you. So thanks very much for listening. I hope you all do have a wonderful Christmas. Enjoy the time with family and friends. We look forward to coming at you next year with a bit more content and some thoughts. We hope that you find these conversations somewhat useful in at least taking you away from the forest to have a good hard look at those trees and from a distance. So that's what we're hoping we can achieve by adding some perspective to what we do. So, and Mark, no doubt we'll talk, but Merry Christmas to you, and hope you have a fantastic time. I don't know, do we say Merry Christmas now, or is that not? If it's non-PC, you can be sure that I'll say it. Season's greetings. Excuse me. Season's greetings. As much as I don't want to offend people, I do have a knack for it. So, so sometimes you just got to stick with what you're good at. Yeah. Have a great Christmas. Thanks again for joining, everybody, and we'll see you next year. Cheers.
Bye.